Hello, my lovelies. Oh, thank you, Vancouver by night. Hello, readers. Nice and early. Hi, how is everyone? So, I have had a couple of weeks off work and I'm going back tomorrow. So, I thought a cheeky little read along might be the ticket while I can distract myself from having to become a productive member of society once again. And I was originally going to go with a different book, but I feel like this little hot number here, one of my favourites from the entire series, for reasons which will become obvious soon enough, might be just a little bit of a breather. For those who are not familiar with the world of darkness and Vampire the Masquerade, this particular book does contain some not great subjects. It does have some sexual violence. It does have blood, gore, some emotional violence as well. So if those things are of a particular pain to you and you don't want to encounter those, then maybe this isn't the stream for you. I love you all the same, but please look after yourselves and each other. We want to have fun in a safe and consensual way, and we don't want anyone to get hurt. Yes, this is very much like watching SBS after 9:30 p.m. With significantly less European overtones because I don't really have that kind of a voice. So, shall we get into it then with Revelations of the Dark Mother? So this is a book specifically designed around the Bahari, not a very well-known group of vampires and others in the world of darkness. They are the followers of Lilith. Many of the vampires that you encounter across Vampire the Masquerade and other splats see Cain as the progenitor for all vampire kind. He is the granddaddy vampire of them all. There is another story that isn't so frequently told, and that is that Cain stole the powers of being a vampire, or at least some of them, from Lilith herself. Lilith, in this iteration of the mythology, being the first wife of Adam. Though, as we will see, she's got a bit of a complicated history. So, without further ado, let's get into some revelations of the Dark Mother. Revelations of the Dark Mother, Seeds from the Twilight Garden, compiled by Rachel Dollian. Preface. Coiled at the roots. Over and over I hear two sounds, near whispers, silent and sibilant, like the crack of a serpent's tongue. Lilith. The screech-owl voice shrieking in the twilight, crouched over the edge of insanity, stealing the breath of babes and whisking away the dreamer's sea. The touch of every shame, the glinting teeth of a lover none will admit but all desire. The Dark Queen who will rise to usher in the end of the world. I've seen her, you've seen her. A cult of her devotees celebrates her example, and any number of books, pamphlets, songs, scriptures and tracts have been created to damn, divinify or define her. The mortals even enjoy a Lilith fair in which women supposedly break the role of trophy and define their femininity in song. An amusing conceit when you look at it. A playground of granola folkies sing-songing homilies in Lilith's name. According to rabbinical legend and the bygone testaments of and Babylon, Lilith was the first woman, the left to Adam's right, the equal grown from his back, flesh of his flesh. Beside her Eve, the mother of all, is a pale, spectre. As part of the original two, Lilith inherited magical birthrights and learned great arts. Rightfully, she considered herself the equal of Adam. Like most men, he saw things differently. When he raped her, Lilith appealed to the Most High, who delivered her out of Eden and cast her out into the unformed world. From that point on, it is said, she became a vengeful demon, killing children, stealing seed, and waylaying virtuous men. Hers is not, shall we say, an unfamiliar story. In the law of Cain, our much beloved sire, Lilith becomes the mother who taught him the arts of night. Out of pity, she took him in when God and man had cast him aside. Her recompense was to be demonized as a dark mother. For 13 generations, Cain's offspring have conspired against her, even as the mortals did. Charms have been fashioned, blood hunts called, and entire bloodlines obliterated in the name of this genocidal campaign. Some people, awed by the legendary prowess of this woman, feel compelled to know, is she real? As if the knowledge would grant them a sudden visitation. Others demand, what is she? A vampire? A magus? Some goddess or moon-blessed creature? I can only say with certainty that Lilith is Lilith, and she will not be constrained by an arbitrary set of classifications. Is Lilith real? One might ask the same of Jesus of Nazareth, or Moses, or Gautama Buddha, or any of 1,000 other quasi-historical figures whose images breed devotion and terror. If you're asking, can you prove that Lilith walked the earth? My answer is no. I cannot point to a skeleton or a set of footprints or a list of quotations and statistics and say that is Lilith. I might note, however, that all things are possible in this strange world of ours, and that mythology has a nasty way of sneaking up on you when you least expect it, and sinking its teeth into your neck. In the words of our elders, Lilith represents a great threat. Her cults, when they have been found among our kind, have been extinguished with the tenderness we have come to associate with our fratricidal breed. Our holy scriptures, so lovingly codified by the esteemed Aristotle de Laurent, cloak her in two vastly different robes. The compassionate mentor of our sire and the dark queen he will battle at the end of time. How fitting, a nurturing mother and a demonic whore. So much for the transformative powers of the embrace. The tale of Lilith is the tale of us all. I speak not only of my sisters in darkness, but of all kindred. Like her, we grasp a forbidden inheritance, consume it, and become as gods, superior to all that we once were. Like her, we suffer for that transformation, becoming outcasts even among our children. Like her, we establish dominions only to see them swept away by those we helped sire. And like her, we must retreat into the darkness, gather ourselves, and scream defiance against the eyes in the night before we can truly taste the fruit we have eaten. Ironic, then, that she should be so hated. That has a lot to do with it, I suspect. With the legacy of Lilith's catspaw, Cain, the sire of all our kind. He who embraced the night, yet passed down a litany of forbiddance that each one of us defies each night we exist. A collection of antiquated laws based on the superiority of elders and the sanctity of their eternal wisdom. Those laws, we are told, are essential for our survival. Faced with an array of enemies, mortal and otherwise, we require a code of conduct to sustain us. Who better to dictate our immortal strictures than a great dark father? What better enemy than his counterpart, the seductive, incestuous mother that countless generations have learnt to fear? What good are strictures without a threat? Better still, how could our kind continue to revere Cain's laws if that sire existed in the shadow of she who raised him from the dust? What would happen, I wonder, if we were to toss Cain's laws into the sea and follow our instincts as our mother bids us? There'd be chaos, the elders say, and they'd be right, but there is wisdom in chaos. The Sabbat recognises much, even if they fall prey to revelling in disorder rather than learning from it. The Magi realise it too, from what I have seen over the years. Their constant infighting stems from a disagreement over the level of chaos it takes to achieve enlightenment. We kindred are chaotic beings at heart, yet from my admittedly short experience in our undead state, I have to confess that we seem static and dull, lustreless as tarnished silver uncs, pressed into service for a series of masters, all of whom claim to know what is best for our kind. Weighed down by the mantles of clan and Cain, we wander in the shadow of some mythical Gehenna. Some night soon, we are told, the ancient ghosts will rise, kick ass and settle down to a long breakfast of souls. This is our law. And we consider ourselves masters of the night? Better we should stick with that overused and absurd moniker, children of the night. God knows we certainly act that way sometimes. While we cringe at the throne of some vaunted ancestor who may or may not be pure mythology and his princely stand-ins, the Dark Mother beckons us to renounce the rules that our forefather made. Cain handed down laws that he himself could not abide. By his own admission, his elder Lilith told him to draw away from the tantalus fruit of ultimate power. He did not, and he accomplished great things. Might we not all do the same? Of course. Do I spew heresies? Good. The truth always sounds heretical, and the lie keepers always seek to keep it buried, lost, forbidden, punishable by death. But without the shining truth in heresy, without the hammer strike at the pillars of order, we are chained like pit bulls or poodles at our lieges' tables. Yes, even we, the masters of darkness, we, perhaps most of all, are imprisoned by our own immortality. Only an immortal can be a slave for many lifetimes. Lilith is the antithesis of slavery. Be free, she says, and suffer. Oh, yes, the Dark Mother is all about suffering. She has suffered, her children have suffered, her devotees suffer, and I shall doubtless suffer for daring to put this all down into words. I can see the parchments with my name inscribed in vitae, tossed in the fires to signify a dozen, hell, 1,000 blood hunts. I've already given up hope of immortality. Some morning, probably soon, the sun will claim me forever. My assassins, congratulating themselves on a job well done, will return to their masters' tables, gobble a few scraps and continue on their way, convinced that the night will last forever, or at least until Gehenna. And I'm going to be laughing at you all the way to hell, because in my suffering I will have achieved an insight that my assassins will never know, and that insight will make me free. Only through pain can we open our eyes. I entered Lilith's garden on a quest for my sire, determined to expose the Lilithites, actually called Bahari, before the altar of our esteemed Camarilla. I dove into an endless sea of hidden lore. My prize? The coveted cycle of Lilith, described by Monsieur de Laurent, and of course a fat reward from my oh-so-revered creator. You see, I had noticed what so many of our elders had not, That is the way of Lilith, to hide in plain sight, in songs, in books, in the rantings of politicists, in the crumbling bell tower of human society. Our elders are too static, too aged to see the signs. They do not understand the immensity of modern culture, and so the songs of Lilith are waved away with dismissive hands. In that dismissal, the songs grow louder still until those swelling arias drown out the dusty chorus of tradition. An elder cannot hear the songs I hear, cannot see the visions I have seen. Lilith is among us now. Her devotees are legion. Most do not understand what they serve, and they worship at her altar of pain out of sheer abandon, which is the point, not out of some archaic set of scriptures. The true Lilith cults, collectively called the Bahari, are minuscule, infinitesimal societies among the damned and living alike. But the true followers of Lilith are everywhere. Wherever people cast off fear and cross into the fields of the outlaws, Lilith smiles from the shadows. In those fields she knows they will learn, or they will perish. Usually both. This realization became mine as I watched the nightly parade of horrors on my TV screen. Seduced, I threw aside my civilized clothing and dove into the endless sea, in the sing-song of secret Bahari muses, like the punk poetess Patricia Delaforge, whose work I reprint here with her blessings. I felt the flush of faith rising like a bruise on battered skin. In the fingernail furrows of adolescent crazies, in the bulimic puke of would-be doll children, in the heroin needles of those whose only prayer is oblivion, I began to hear her gentle refrain. Live, learn, suffer, and transcend as I have. And so I did. I went to standing stones at the height of the full moon. I danced beside the witch folk and drank their bitter potions. I pissed at the roots of trees alongside our lupine foes, and I drank the blood of mortal antiquarians. When possible, I sampled the abysses of human excess. Torture in Bosnia, satanic rites in Berkeley, baby orgies in Thailand, and drugged frenzies in Berlin, all the while making mental notes of the songs that rose in my head each time I tempted my admittedly inhuman limits. Each experience made the words a little clearer, until I heard them everywhere. Ahi hai Lilith, all hail Lilith. Now that I recognise the refrain, I see it everywhere. In graffiti, in popular dance songs, in subliminal messages that worked into advertising and dressed the waifish corpses of emaciated fashion models. Through pain, I have been initiated into a surreal fellowship that may or may not even know the allegiances it professes. Since that time of recognition, I cannot get enough sensation. I've been whipped with flaming straps, branded exquisite pain for a kindred, let me tell you. Dragged naked through shards of glass and submerged likewise beneath flows of ice. The sensations only heightened the chorus within my head, a chorus so loud it invades my daytime sleep. That chorus drives away the fear that was once my kindred inheritance. Hell holds no more terrors for me. Although dead, I have learned to live more freely than I ever had before. Through learned friends, commanded pawns, and sacrifices of flesh and spirit, I have opened up my ears to Lilith's gospel. What I had hoped to make a document of our enemies became a firebrand, burning me from the inside out, even as I sought to put the flame song into words. Lilith wants us to burn ourselves away, to blacken the skins of our spirits as her own was burned in the desert between worlds, to fall and scrape our knees and comfort ourselves on our own blood welling from the wounds, to sup on the tears of our damnation, because in pain we learn, in suffering we grow stronger, In defiance we thrive, like a plant pruned back by a gardener's hand. Lilith is the gardener, the cruel mother, the thorn on the rose of our survival. Without pain, she teaches us, nothing else matters. Without a scream in the night, our voices are choked by the stillness of eternity. My quest for the Dark Mother has ripped the shades from my eyes and forced me to confront the truth that drove countless elders mad. Our laws are lies. Our existence is a joke. Our sire was a pawn in an endgame with God, and God himself is a pale reflection of a brief flash of existence in between endless nothingness. Lilith understands this. Her devotees, who take the name Bahari as a tribute to Bahari, the third garden raised by the Dark Mother, realize it. Her offspring, damned as demons and now 1,000 of years dead, see it from the buds of the trees planted in their honour in the third garden of the Dark Queen. Without pain, without change, existence is meaningless. Comfort is decay. Power is a raindrop dying in the desert sun. Agony is the doorway to ecstasy. Lilith is our mother in the truest sense. Through defiance, she made herself a god. Through love, she devastated Eden. She is the great serpent coiled at the roots of the tree of life and knowledge, and her venom is the wisdom coursing through the sap and bubbling into the fruit. Although her sphere is the moon, the touch of her kiss is napalm fire. I confess that fire has left me burned, and I am glad of it. I have squandered the small but enviable cash I gathered into my unlife, spent it on a vanity pressing of 20,000 copies of this heretical little diatribe, and had it shipped to bookstores across the world. Fuck your pathetic masquerade, and fuck the petty power politics that so epitomise your existence. I am free of all of them. My final nights will be spent in the clearest haze I have ever known. Perhaps others will follow my lead. I know that my existence from this point onward will be measured in days or weeks, and so I choose to spend my holdings on a gift to the Dark Mother. Call it a lesson from the twilight. A broadside fired from a sinking ship at the waterline of her would-be conquerors. It is the way of Lilith, I have learned, to teach with pain. To throw aside the decidedly deadly consequences of freedom in order to embrace the lessons you learn on the way to oblivion. Lilith herself has survived, assuming, of course, that she has survived, only by the grace of fortune, the immortality of her arts, and the blazing example she sets for those with the courage to follow it. I cannot hope to do the same, so I welcome the sun with open arms, heart and spirit. Rape me into ashes if you will. I can take it. Ahi Hai Lilatu. Signed, Rachel Dolliam. Notes about this book. Lilith's law is anti-law. Unlike the constipated scriptures to which we're so accustomed, her words flow through a gospel of impressions, a canticle of shadows that can be deciphered only through experience. No two readers will absorb those teachings the same way, and I doubt that any one reader would see the meanings in the same passage twice. The esteemed Monsieur de Laurent, to whom I am indebted for his marvellously inspirational secret litany of the Dark Father's laws, spent years searching for the definitive words of Cain and his followers, blissfully oblivious to the impossibility of definitive truth. I have done the opposite. My research, while exhaustive and exhausting, has concentrated on the diverse impressions rather than specific scholarship. Most of my sources are oral rather than written, and have probably seen millennia of reinterpretation. Monsieur de Laurent would doubtless call my methodology sloppy and haphazard, but I have merely followed the way of Lilith. Her garden is a growing, changing thing, not a tablet of stone, but a wild thatch of nettles and fruits. Where possible, I have endeavoured to support the oral law I have heard with written records. In some places, things are the other way around. The very diversity and antiquity of the Bahari cult, or more appropriately cults, make the compilation of a definitive gospel of Lilith an impossible task, even for an immortal. Yet that very diversity supplies the sect with strength and flexibility. While other more rigid societies rise, fragment, and fall by their founders' words, the Dark Mother demands a few simple things from her devotees. Open your eyes, hold out your arms, and cultivate a garden, both within and without, with the seeds of your experience. The Oath of Lilith, with which I begin my collection, is the closest thing to a code the society respects. The Three Cycles of Lilith. De Laurent refers to the elusive cycle of Lilith, of which he was unable to secure anything but the smallest fleeting glimpse. There's a reason for this. That document does not exist. What he saw, if indeed his pretty story is anything other than romantic fabrication, was probably either a Bahari fragment, a hoax, or a Cainite retelling of the encounter from our sire's point of view. But my observations, the so-called cycle has, in fact, at least 9 different versions. Many of these involve 4 parts: a winter rite, a spring invocation, a summer observance, and the autumn ritual, which leads to the winter, which in turn begins the cycle again. Like the Chronicle of Cain, this account may be taken 2 ways: as a literal retelling of ancient demigods and their domestic conflicts, or as a symbolic testament of matriarchal cultures harvesting the sea, the womb, and the crops, until jealous men overthrew them, killed their families, and scattered their tribes. Either way, the figure of Lilith stands as an intimidating and inspiring figure. She transcends her role, learns from her torments, and rises again, stronger than before, but cloaked in shadows and forever sworn to vengeance. This cycle is, in some ways, my own invention. The Mother prizes imagination over dogma. In keeping with some Bahari law keepers, I have divided these scriptures into 3 books, corresponding to the ancient and nigh universal trinity of Maid, Mother, and Crone, but in a reversed order. The oldest tales are told first, then the middle cycles, and then the youngest and most contemporary. This order reflects the progression of Lilith. The Book of the Serpent recounts the young idealism of the Mother, her creation, trials, and ascension from prized toy to godhood. The Book of the Owl reflects her personal quest and the foundations of Alona, the first garden of hope, and Dainu, the second garden of renewal. This latter garden provides a home for Lilith, her consort Lucifer, and their children. When Cain discovers or is led to that place, he changes the course of humanity and of all our kind. The Book of the Dragon closes the circle by describing the seeding of Bahari, the third garden of sorrows. From this place which is no place, Lilith summons the spirits of tempest and torment, and declares a long night of suffering, especially among the children of Cain. This night, according to prophecy, shall climax with the rising of the tides, during which the current world will perish beneath the waves and wind, to be reborn when the next world begins. In between, we see glimpses of Lilith's helpmates, the Bahari and the 3 sacred beasts. The first 2 cycles revolve around the Mother and her tribulations. The third begins with her, but from that point on, Lilith becomes an enigma. We have scattered tales of her nocturnal rapaciousness, but those come largely from other later sources. The Bahari themselves avoid composing scriptures of Lilith's actions after Bahari seeding. Occasional songs or regional myths speak of what might have occurred, but the formal gospel is silent on the nights between the malediction and the rising tides. In this silence, a Bahar must draw his own conclusions. Lilith makes no promises, nor does she stand atop a hill and declare her existence or intentions. Once the seeds of Bahari are scattered, Lilith sinks into the night, possibly to wait beneath the waves, more likely to pass among us as a mortal, taking deceptive shapes until her endgame comes to fruition. For Lilith's plan is an endgame, a showdown with the god who created her, a lover who abandoned her, and the ungrateful wretch who rose to immortality by her hand but slew her children out of spite. Lilith's seeds, the Bahari, and their mantras of pain and enlightenment go forth into the worlds of mortal and spirit, bringing them fruits of temptation, succor, and revelation. The world we see about us is a result of that endgame, a gambit Lilith is winning. Jehovah is a cracked statue. Lucifer has devotees, but their insight is obscured, like his bygone love behind a wall of spite. Cain is vanished, and his children feast on each other in a blind man's quest for illusory gold. Can you hear the waves outside your door? I assure you I can. The Bahari. The harbingers of those waves, if not the waves themselves, go by the name Bahari. Each Baham considers herself the fruit of the mother's third and final garden. As such, these offspring cultivate orchards of pain and groves of enlightenment, nurturing crises around them, then tending the survivors and teaching them to learn from their pain. Each gardener's tools are as individual as sin. Some employ the rude plough of physical torture and thrive in the worm-ridden furrows of large cities, war zones, and the underworld. Others prefer the even hand of a seeder, planting intrigues and gossips, then fertilizing them with innuendos. Some prune the branches of broken trees, working as confidants and healers among the walking wounded, clipping them with small cuts and then reshaping the stalks with gentle words. Regardless of his methodology, the true Baham tends his projects through kindness and encouragement. Pain is worthless unless the sufferer learns something in its aftermath. Destruction is neither a Baham's point nor his prerogative. The Dark Mother will deal with such things in her own time. Until then, each Baham plants the seeds of enlightenment and then helps them grow. One would presume, given the sex of the Dark Mother, and that all Bahari are female. One would be deeply mistaken to do so. Just as men often tend the shrines of Mary or the blood-drenched altars of Kali, who may themselves represent facets of the Dark Mother, so the male prunes trees in Lilith's garden too. Presented with Lilith's links to Cain and the mysterious Lamia, see below, an outsider might also assume that Bahari are vampires. Not so. While it's true that the Dark Mother's fosterlings feed on blood and consider themselves reborn through it, they are not kindred in the strictest sense. Many are simple mortals with no powers to speak of. Some are elevated mortals, magi with the Mother's own occult talents. A handful are true vampires, but these kindred have forsaken their ties to Cain's brood. Drinking Lilith's blood, they symbolically sever their connections to her betrayer and raise themselves above the descendants of Eve. Given the name of the sect, one might gather that all Bahari work together as a unified whole. Again, wrong. Although Lilith's fruit and flowers rise from similar seeds, they grow as they will. Most congregate in small patches, cults of between 3 and 7 members, or operate routes that run correspondence through the mails, media and internet, but keep their branches far apart. A good many grow like trees in their own little corners, feeding themselves with small but potent miseries. Others imitate the weeds, scattering small enlightenments and greater agonies in quick, widespread bursts. Some sects are deeply formal, possessing ornate hierarchies and protocols. Others are a choir of one voice. The mother's garden has room for them all, so long as they keep that garden spreading. Presented with the biblical paradigm I have chosen, an observer might bind the ways of Lilith to the Western religious tradition. Yet again, not so. While we kindred remain mired in our worship of biblical myth, the ways of Lilith are universal. True, I often describe them in terms of the familiar Jehovah, Adam, Lucifer patriarchy. Although many of the Dark Mother's own followers cling to these myths, that may simply be the result of the widespread influence of the West. I prefer to see the Lilith saga as a sliver of a greater tradition, that of the great Dark Mother who nurtures with love, then chastises with death. That tradition is universal. I see the face of Lilith in the bright sword of Ishtar, in the pits of Kali, in the webs of Spider-Woman, and even in the soft but remote embrace of Mary. And just as I see these faces, the Bahari revere them in ritual. I have danced around African gardens, drunk blood with mixed ghee, wailed pleasure cries to the Tibetan night. The mother is everywhere, as are her children. Although their allegiance to Lilith might make Bahari seem like natural feminists, the truth is far more complex. Female does not necessarily equate exalted. On the contrary, most women in the Bahari view are descendants of Eve, the third and most inferior woman, created from a lonely Adam. Lacking Lilith's original gifts and her divine gestation, these women really are the cheap cattle that misogynists scorn. Until and unless a woman consumes the mother's blood and takes her oath, that woman is an animal. Worthwhile in her own way, certainly, but far below the Bahari. Initiation. Becoming a Baham is often a simple but excruciating process. Like Lilith herself, a prospective Baham begins as a favoured person, wealthy perhaps, or beautiful, or popular, or blessed in some other way. Suddenly, a cataclysmic event devastates it all and leaves her stumbling through a desert of pain. There she attains some insight into the vast and finite nature of the world. Some see a literal vision of the Dark Mother, or dream of wandering in an empty, waterless waste. Others see the endless eyes of the Ancient One, spoken of in the Genesis fragment, gazing into a Psychoplian void. Others still fall into comas or literally wander in a half-dead state, often pregnant, as Lilith was, until a second catastrophe rocks them out of their stupor. Until this ordeal and vision occur, a would-be Baham remains outside the garden. Only by tearing herself on the thorns at the gate may she attain the sweet nectar within. Until that time, she may speak the mother's name, perform her rites, even tend her garden, but still remain outside of it, as Lilith was exiled from Eden. Pain is the initiation, agony and insight the stepping stones. If she's lucky, this unfortunate might discover or be discovered by the followers of Lilith. The rituals they use to teach and initiate her depend on the whims and culture of the Bahari. So-called witches employ the trappings of Wicca, Santeria, and other modern pastimes. Aboriginal cults chitter and grunt about nightmare deities and dance around with bone toys and innards. Secular devotees prefer to speak in symbols of matriarchs and badass mummers, while renunciates of the Christian, Muslim, and especially Jewish traditions use the most familiar names of all. In the faraway monasteries of renegade Buddhists and left-hand tantrikas, candles illuminate copulating disciples and their mutilated servants. Which ones are the true Bahari? All of them, of course. The pain, the vision, the oath, and the gardening are the only real commonalities. The blood of Lilith consecrates an initiation. Like the Christian Eucharist, this blood forms a symbolic bridge between goddess and gardener. Unlike that host, this blood is real, often gathered from the initiate, the initiator, a plant, and a live sacrifice, then blended together in a not too pleasant concoction. After drinking it, the new Baham recites some variation on the oath of Lilith. then receives whatever vows, studies, or torments the initiator feels are appropriate. Many Bahari learn the rules called Bahara, the symbolic language of the sect. Many others do not. It's worth noting that thousands, perhaps millions of devotees worship at Lila's altar without ever knowing what they're doing. While not formal Bahari, these acolytes revere pain, revel in the occult, and make a point of advocating both. Although never formally initiated into the Bahari Fellowship, I was privileged to meet several members of the sect in an occult bookstore in Soho, New York City. Two of their number were kindred, or as I should stress, Laka, since blood Bahari do not consider themselves kindred. 3 others were mortal. These fascinating and charismatic personages took me on a whirlwind tour of pain and absolution. In their company, I encountered other Bahari, met countless followers of the Mother, who knew not why they did, travelled to secluded sites, and perused Bahara pictograms which gave substance to the following scriptures. I knew as I swelled with the Mother's wisdom that my revels would lead other kindred to my tutors. As an act of compassion, I killed nearly all of them. Better that death might come from my loving hands than from the brutal ministrations of Archon or mind rape of warlocks. Out of respect for my teachers, I will not profane their names with so much as a pseudonym. Let those who have passed us in the night draw their own conclusions. I remained silent. My exquisite guides introduced me to the equally exquisite lessons. One, a magus, took me so far into myself that I thought my mind had snapped. His hands held the promise of eternal love, but he proved more fickle in his affectations than any kindred Lothario. I eviscerated him while he copulated with a conquest, a boy of 12 whom I left alive to learn from his experience. A former toreador sang me the songs of a Bahari nun cloistered in the 12th century Milan. The nun's devotions were considered odes to Mary until a scholar unearthed her true allegiance. As one might expect, the nun was burned in a pile of her own hymns. Sadly, all transcriptions were purged as well. My muse played them from memory. When she herself crumbled in the morning sun, the last recollections of the nun's compositions blew away with her. A clanless wanderer made my skin itch. Rude as a jackal, she seemed to take pride in the abuse we heaped on her. Her mouth, unusually large, both literal and metaphorical, never shut. When I fed her into a tree shredder, it was the only murder I'd enjoyed in years. I flayed the old man alive. He had asked me to, and I complied, weeping tears of blood as I did so. What a waste. His Latin was as flawless as a Roman scholar's. His collection of books, from pulp romances to high classical manuscripts, was remarkable, if only for its variety. The old man had no skill with manners, I confess, and this made him the butt of many of our pranks. He took it all in humour, but seemed to nurse a grudge he never satisfied. Dried, his skin formed the parchment for the original edition of this book. He would have wanted it that way. One girl I let survive. To this day I cannot explain the impulse that led me to this act of cruelty. Also mortal, the girl seemed vaguely familiar. I ran across her likeness later in a chronicle of magical lore. It may have been coincidence, but she deeply resembled both a pupil of Cagliostro and a consort of Aleister Crowley. A submissive by inclination, she held the most incredible pain tolerance of any mortal I had ever met. The leader of the group, a Balinese woman of indeterminate age, was mortal. Her charisma, however, was like a living thing. Although she possessed no mystical power as far as I could see, she held the others spellbound with every word she spoke. I let her live too. There are too few of her kind out there as it is. Although she sworn revenge on me for killing her companions, she thanked me for doing so. Dark Mother moves in strange ways indeed. Magic of the Short Dawn. as anyone who has felt the whiplash of the sun's rays, the sharp crunch of a shotgun blast, or the slender pricklings of a vivisection tool can attest, we all attain a burst of insight, a satori when injured. For a flickering moment, the commonplace world freezes and we are transported to a netherland where God's own pulse throbs in our veins. Like drinking from heaven's jugular, this faintly obscene pleasure knocks one dizzy. The moment it is just that, a moment. But when it passes, we have glimpsed something remarkable rising from the haze of pain. Many Bahari call this moment Sa, the short dawn. The mystics among them liken it to the moment of clarity that Magi call awakening. Indeed, many of their number claim to be awakened beings whose Sa led them to study the magical arts. Lilith experienced Sa while she was wandering the unmade lands, and she led Cain to it when he descended into hell. Properly experienced, Sa leads to heightened consciousness, supernal insight, and mystical powers. Humans search for it in sadomasochistic rituals, but it rarely comes in such structured confines. To find a true Sa, one must be flung headlong into a physical and emotional abyss and come out the other side. The Bahari cultivate Sa both in themselves and in others. To them, it's the sweet fruit of knowledge and the bitter pulp of life in one. Perhaps the mystic overtones of Sa lend Lilith her sorceress air. Although she clearly transcends mortal magic, sorcerers have been linked to Lilith since the beginning of time. That's no less true today. Sects of magicians harbour large numbers of Bahari, whose mystic arts advance the Dark Mother's dream of final tides. Although I'm no scholar of magical lore, I've met several of these so-called magi in their ritual grounds. The most prevalent, it seems, come from a mystical clan which takes the name of the healing plant vervain, or verbena, considering their roles as fruits and tenderers of Lilith's garden. The botanical name is appropriate. Others belong to a reincarnate society whose image of a great wheel corresponds to the Ancient One's eternal eyes, opening and closing in an endless cycle of creation and destruction. Still others ride on the ecstasy of pain and the flashes of enlightenment that come with it, or lead cults of dubious origin. While many of these mystics advance the Queen's agenda on a fairly local basis, I admit that some of them retain herds that would be the envy of any kindred prince. By nurturing those herds with creeds of renewal through sacrifice, Bahari magicians raise a hunger for such enlightenment and for more and greater agonies. Blood Bahari, renunciants of Cain. Like Cain, kindred are drawn to and inspired by torment. This tendency explains such suicidal pastimes as firewalking, Gehenna politics, and the Samitsi in general. When you consider that fact, the kindred renunciants called Laka, or Blood Bahari, among Lilith's hosts only seem natural. Like myself, many of these vampires begin as blind sheep, hit by Sa. Some few of them understand the true order of things and soon join the Bahari. The blood rite breaks the chain of vitae that binds us to our beginnings. Like Lilith eating the fruit of Eden, this moment erases our former blindness. From that point on, we are individuals tending the garden of pain. It makes me smile to think of our oh so sagacious elders playing into Lilith's hands so readily. Their ceaseless conflict for supremacy breeds anarchs and would-be Bahari, like fouled water breeds dysentery. Lilith's curse holds true today. The children of Cain feast upon each other's hearts, figuratively and otherwise, like palpitating delicacies. The Lamia, an extinct offshoot of the Giovanni, present a puzzle to the scholar. Giovanni Apocrypha gained at great price, I assure you, state the bloodline began when one of their number raped a priest of Lilith. Supposedly, this priestess was the only daughter of Adam and Lilith and was born from an endless cycle of rape and conception stretching back to Adam's own brutality. Bahari legend, on the other hand, clearly states that Lilith had 3 daughters and 3 sons, that none of them were Adams, and that all of them were slain. Although this would hardly be the first time that legends disagreed with one another, the point is still worth addressing. Supposedly, these Lamia went on to become rare but enlightened kindred, keeping the true rights of the Dark Mother, but serving the clan which the Giovanni destroyed. I maintain this is nonsense, while it is entirely possible that one such Cappadocian embraced a Bahari priestess. It would be a poor Baham who would spend all her time fucking corpses in service to Cain's offspring. Although proving my theory would be difficult, all Lamia were supposedly exterminated in the 1800s. I speculate the Giovanni progenitors were being had. Perhaps our mythical priestess really believed she was descended from Adam and the Mother. Perhaps she was. Lilith is said to have been pregnant during her trek across the desert, and it is possible that she carried a human child as well as the unearthly offspring of Jehovah. Knowing what I do of the Short Dawn and its formidable aftershocks, I'm sceptical that a tribe of half-breed corpse fuckers could have enslaved the followers of Lilith. More likely, a handful of Bahari went along with the joke and then led their masters into a series of fatal traps. Either way, the Lamia are said to have commanded fearsome plagues and necromancies. An account of one captured by inquisitors can be found in Book 3. Perhaps the Lamia still thrive under some other name. Having engineered the destruction of the Cappadocians, they broke their blood ties and joined the ever-growing ranks of the Laka, a fellowship to which I belong myself, and I am far from alone. Enough trivia. Let the fruits be harvested and the final tides rise. Feast on these revelations as I have feasted on the blood and hearts of my former lovers and cousins. I have done my part and await the short but brilliant dawn. Examples of Bahara pictograms. A secret society requires secret communications. Bahara, a mnemonic collection of symbols, provides a written basis for oral tradition. While not a language in the formal sense, it offers an initiated Baham a sense of belonging. From my sources, I infer that Bahara derives from the medieval pictograms of the bygone Lamia bloodline, which come themselves from a still older source. Those root forms of the language are, to my knowledge, long gone, although examples probably still exist in some secluded groves, unrecognisable as what they once were. The modern form of Bahara uses plants and animals as abstract bases for its letters. Like the sect itself, the language is said to have grown from the seeds of the Third Garden, and its plant-like forms echo that idea. We'll get some picture time happening. So we've got some pictures here. We've got this symbol, which is the moon, and some thorns, and then some seeds. That one stands for Lilith. The, scythe, thorned scythe, maybe, stands for Cain. I think the one in the middle there needs no translation. The scythe with a blood underneath it stands for kindred. And then, of course, we've got the moon. And more still. You can see a lot of simplified forms. So we've got a lot of seeds, scythes, sheaves of wheat, repetitions of somewhat simplified animal forms. Lucifer is the moon with the thorns around it, and then the thorns around it are the sun itself. If you don't have a copy of this book, I'm pretty certain you can find it on Drive-Thru RPG. If you're looking for additions into a Vampire the Masquerade game, as you know, sigils that are dotted about a city or left at crime scenes, they can be quite useful just to plant the seed, so to speak. First circle, the Book of the Serpent. Fucked by a bolt on high, mother may I? Yes, good, behave, as if you were flying on a bit of seed. My mouth is a drum, my belly a furnace of lies. Patricia de la Forge, Outside the Garden. The Oath of Lilith. Editor's note. Taken by a Baham upon his initiation, the oath is said to be a preservation of the words spoken by Lilith herself as she took up the mantle of the moon. Fantasy, I'm sure, but the words, when spoken, ring with a power that cannot be denied. Although I have never considered myself a formal Baham, I take this oath each night as I arise. This devotion of mine may explain a few things. When first I tasted the fruit of the trees, felt the seeds of life and knowledge burn within me, I swore that day that I would not look back. When first I tasted the flesh of the kilt, felt the tang of the blood and the crunch of the bones, I swore that day I would not die. When first I tasted my own blood, felt the surge and stir of my own life upon my lips, I swore that day to love myself above all. When first I tasted the light of the moon, felt its glow in my womb and its wild tenderness, I swore that day to walk in night. When first I tasted the love of a god, felt the tearing rise of song and fire, I swore on that day to cherish the flesh. When first I tasted the salt of the sea, felt my blood become water as the sky fell behind me, I swore that day to descend and to return with wonders. When first I tasted the love of a child, screamed with the joy of new life, and wept for what I had lost and gained, I swore that day to nurture life as I embraced death before. I swear by 3 times 3 times 3 that these 7 moments shall remain my own, and whatever may transpire, no god, nor man, nor beast may take them from me. I swear by myself and my immortality. The Genesis fragment. Editor's notes. This, the core of the Lilith myth cycle, is what's missing from conventional scriptures. Although it supposedly describes the first days, the Judeo-Christian Genesis does not refer to Lilith at all. We find her mentioned in the Jewish rabbinical midrashim and several obscure and not so obscure Hebrew texts. But the consolidations of both the Christian Bible and the Jewish Tanakh find the first woman absent. When we look upon this lost Genesis, we can see why. Despite its name, the so-called Genesis fragment can't actually be considered part of the canonical book of Jewish and Christian law, although the fragment's earliest example is indeed written in Hebrew, the casual, occasionally even mocking portrayal of Jehovah, traditionally encrypted as YHWH, the Lord, the Holy One, and followed by Blessed be He, is so at odds with the ancient Jewish paradigm that the fragment can be considered, at best, the work of a deeply heretical Israelite. Not that there's anything unusual in that. Genesis, Exodus, and the other early books declare the existence of myriad heretical or pagan sects among the children of Abraham. An author with a, shall we say, unconventional view of the Almighty is not hard to imagine. Still, many heretical writings were purged along with their authors. This Genesis fragment managed to make it into the writings smuggled from the Roman siege of Jerusalem, AD 64, and was somehow saved from destruction. Given the rather blasphemous nature of the fragment, I doubt that it was ever considered part of the Pentateuch or the 5 books of Moses. More likely, it was kept as a part of a protective charm or ritual to know thine enemy, as it were, or as some keepsake or curio of a brave scholar. In any case, the fragment was preserved from the fires of Rome's legions, but left aside when the Torah was compiled from the salvaged writings. Again, far later, when the Nicene Council consolidated the books for the Christian Bible. For accuracy's sake, I compared this fragment against 2 similar ones, one in Greek and the other one preserved in the oral tradition through the Bahari rites. I was given access to a Bahari pictogram version, but since those designs are designed as mnemonics, not literal words, there could hardly be a definitive Bahari version. Partly for flavour's sake and partly to capture the rhythm of the Hebrew, I've used the Israelite version as the springboard for my translations. A series of footnotes record my own observations. I couldn't begin to claim which of these 3 versions is the definitive one. Each boasts its own authority. The Bahari account obviously functions as the Gospel according to Lilith. The Greek source serves as a bridge between the older scroll and the modern translation and includes some intriguing pantheistic ambiguities. The heretical Israelite document fits best in with our Western conception of scripture. Surprisingly, they all correspond disturbingly well. While the fragment boasts tantalizing Kabbalistic elements, they're diffused and disjointed. Was the author a woman? If so, it would account for the incomplete correspondences and occasionally improvised Hebrew. Feminine scholarship was frowned upon at best and often forbidden, especially when that scholarship involved scripture. Even young men were and still are kept away from the most sacred writings. I think the fragment's true source comes from women's law, the oral tradition passed down between mother and daughter and rarely written down. That's certainly the case with the Bahari version. The similarities between all fragments lend weight to my assertion. Despite its source and importance to the Bahari doctrine, the fragment is more the story of the first days than an accurate account of Lilith's trials. Lilith really isn't the protagonist at all. That distinction belongs to Jehovah, the troubled, proud, and ultimately tragic God whose hubris shatters the balance of immortal creation. All the same, his acts break a stranglehold of stasis and create the first free-willed creature, Lilith. As she takes the stage, that which was falls to that which will be. Her defiance, first of Jehovah, and then of the elements, then of Lucifer, and finally of the other gods, shakes up the happy little world that had harboured profound injustices. She brings love, joy, revelry, and ultimately disaster, but emerges as the true architect of our world, for better and worse. When she departs for the endless sea to establish her own garden, we see Jehovah's true equal, the woman who forced him to see the illusion behind which he was hiding. No wonder the Bahari consider her the true goddess of our world. The Genesis fragment. Part 1. The Creation. Once, all was silent and stillness. This was the time of nothing, when the Ancient One rested its eyes and moved not. Every 55,555 years, the Ancient One breaks its rest and opens its eyes to see what was not there before. Each 55,555 years it closes its eyes, and all becomes silence and stillness again. Then the Ancient One opened its eyes for the 333rd time, and a bolt of light split the darkness. Thence came Jehovah and the other shining ones. To delight the eyes of the Ancient One, they spoke great words and sang great songs, and thence wove the world into being. Upon the shells of the 332 old worlds did they tread, and the creatures of those worlds did howl and loose themselves upon the wilderness. Each of the host raised a garden and set itself to creating the plants and beasts therein. Within each garden the earth provided fettle for the growing things, and the fire did burn in the skies by day and night, and the air did flow as well with words of divinity, and the waters did nourish the flowers and plants and all living things. And Jehovah, the firstborn, raised the greatest garden of them all in the land between the rivers, and he grew 2 trees within that garden, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And each tree bore fruit with 7-fold seeds, and each seed carried the great truths of the shining ones. In time, the beasts of Jehovah's garden did fat themselves on the seeds of the trees, and came to know the great truths, but they cared not. They were naked, yet they cared not. They were content and cared not. The beasts fatted themselves upon the seeds and upon the grasses and upon each other, for such is the way of all things, and it was good. But Jehovah hungered. He ate of the fruits of both trees, but they did not fill him. He drank from the 2 rivers and from the salt of the great seas, but they did not fill him. He feasted the gardens of Lucifer and Gabriel and Astarte and Bes, and he was still not satisfied. His belly thundered, and the beasts hid in fear, so great was the hunger of the firstborn. But he hungered not for meat, nor for fruit, nor for the company of his cousins. Jehovah hungered for companionship. So Jehovah mourned, and his moans were like storms. He wept, and his tears wetted the true earth at the centre of his garden, and they fell upon the seeds from the trees of life and knowledge, and they did bring forth wondrous, strange fruit. Male and female rose as one from the mud of the true earth, joined back to back. They struggled to stand and could not, until Jehovah passed his hand between them and made them 2, equal and strong he made them. And the Ancient One saw this not, but seemed it to smile nonetheless. Part 2. The Garden. Jehovah named his creatures Ish or Adam and Lilitu or Lilith, and he bestowed upon them great gifts. To the male he gave the powers of shaping and naming. To the female he gave the powers of fertility and intuition. Raised as they were from the true earth and the seeds of the trees, and the man and woman could see and adore the works of Jehovah, and he was much pleased. And he commanded his servants, those seraphim and cherubim and daemoni and imps, to show Adam and Lilith the wonders of the garden and to employ their gifts. He bade Adam to name each of the creatures and plants therein, and he bade Lilith to breed them, and bade them both to tend the beings of the garden according to their needs. Lilith kept her company amongst the plants and growing things and fruit-bearing trees. Adam passed the time in naming all the beasts, male and female, that did dwell in the garden. Adam learned to hunt the creatures as they hunted each other, and Lilith learned to eat of those trees and plants as the trees and plants did fertilize one another. As she tended the garden, Jehovah forbade Lilith from the trees of life and knowledge, saying, "These are the fruits of godhood. Immortal as thou art, those fruits should devour thee from the inside out, if thou wouldst dare to devour them first. Like lightning from the heavens, they would blind thee and sear thy flesh and innards, and rend thee like the tree which has been struck." But Lilith did not believe Jehovah, but neither did she test him. But she hungered for those fruits, for she was a creation of strong will. When fruit fell from the trees, she ate of it, and lo, her eyes were opened. She was naked and was not ashamed of it. And she became like unto a shining one, like unto Jehovah, but she did not understand how to be like him. And so she waited and watched. Lilith sought to teach Adam the ways of the plants, but he cared not. She watched him at the hunt, and she made tools to help her, and she bade the wolf and the lion and the owl to follow her. Thus did Lilith excel at the arts of hunting and food gathering. Adam was wroth and put him far from her. In his loneliness, Adam did know many of the female beasts, for he desired a mate of his own, and Jehovah told him to look to the female, Lilith, for his mate, saying, Thou art above the beasts, and it is detestable that thou shouldest lie with them. So Adam went to Lilith and told her to lie down with him. But Lilith was repulsed by Adam, for he had mated with beasts. He sought to lay her upon her back, that he might enter her, but she refused, saying, Why must I lay down beneath thee upon my back? I too was made from the true earth, and so I am thine equal. And Adam grew angry. In his rage he forced Lilith upon her back beneath him. When she fought back, he struck her many blows, till the blood of Lilith did fall upon the land, and also the blood of Adam. And Adam was rampant as a bull is when aroused, and his seed fell upon the earth, and brambles and ivy grew thereof, and tore at the heels of Adam and Lilith. Adam speared Lilith upon the thorn of his manhood, but Lilith cried out the true name of Jehovah, and he lifted her up out of the garden and into the heavens. And when Adam was alone and spent his wrath and lust upon the beasts and flowers, but as he had not eaten of the fruit of the two trees, he knew not what he did. Part 3. Lilith as Jehovah's consort. Once Lilith was born away from Adam, Jehovah was wroth. How didst thou know the hidden name of him who created thee? His voice thundered. Lights crackled in the sky. Winds tore at Lilith's hair and bathed her skin in ice. She was afraid, but did not cry out. Instead, she spoke unto him, unto the thunder and lightning and wind, and her fear was as wisdom and comfort against the storm. Lilith said, I have done what thou didst require. I tended the fruits of the garden and the beasts of the forest. When they prospered, I did nurture them. When they fell, I laid them to rest. The fruits which I have eaten are those which fell by thine own hand. I took them as a gift of love from thy bounty, that I might join thee in heaven. So saying, she raised flowers of her own, flowers that had not been created by the hand of Jehovah, nor tended by the hand of Lilith. New, she created them from the firmament of heaven, and she offered them to him. And at last the storm quieted, and Jehovah was stilled. He took her there in heaven, and he knew her as a mate. For 7 days and 7 nights she sat upon his lap, and he sat within hers. And their coupling was like unto the storm, and both of them were satisfied. And love grew between Jehovah and Lilith, like the fruits of the tree of life. But he could not bear to share his power and knowledge. Lilith said, We are now as we should be, equals above all others. Hearing this, Jehovah became jealous, as had his creation Adam. And so it came to pass that Jehovah banished Lilith from his sight, as he had banished the lady who came before her. After 7 days and nights, Lilith was cast down from heaven. Into the dust between the gardens was she cast. Jehovah declared, Mayest thou wander in the unmanned lands for all time. So saying, he vanished, leaving Lilith alone. Part 4. Lilith alone. Then Lilith did go into the desert, and did wander for 7 times 7 days and nights. And the days were hot and savage, like unto the flame, and Lilith's dark skin was reddened, and it blistered and cracked like mud. Her tongue did swell, and her bones did poke through her skin, and her feet were burned as though by fire. But still she did not repent, nor did she request forgiveness of the Lord, or deny that she was as he. The fruit she had eaten sat in Lilith's belly and sustained her. But her heart and belly were rent with the love for him who had betrayed her, and his seed grew in her belly until it was swollen and burdensome. When she was thirsty, Lilith did sup upon her own blood, and it sustained her. The days were torment to her, and so she learnt to burrow into the earth and await the fall of night. Beneath the ground, Lilith learned to send her senses far away, and hence discovered the rivers and the gardens of the other shining ones. And when the sun had passed by, she lifted herself from the earth and continued towards the endless sea. And Lilith walked over rocks and sand, and she crossed mountains and shivered in cold winds, and was lashed by the dust, and she fell many times, but did not stop, and rose and began again, for the pain was as wisdom unto her. Far away from the lands of Jehovah, she found that great expanse which is the endless sea. When she reached it, Lilith threw herself into that sea, and she did swim to the bottom of it, and did become as one of its own creatures, and she did lie with them, as Adam had with the beasts of the garden, and she did hunt them as she had in the garden, until she was sated. And when she beheld the great gardens at the bottom of the sea, Lilith was amazed. In her amazement she caused the plants to flower and the beasts of the sea to breathe, and so she became the mother of that sea. There, beneath the endless sea, Lilith learnt to be like unto Jehovah, and to command the powers thereof. She divested herself of his seed, and did plant it amongst the children of her own womb, and of the seed of the creatures of the sea. When she arose from that sea, her dark skin had turned to amber, and her hair had become as black as pitch. Her eyes were as the surface of that sea, and they danced like the moon upon those waters. But she could not create a garden like the place of Jehovah. She ground her teeth in jealousy. Although she could craft great wonders and gave birth to many strange beasts, Lilith was not satisfied. So she left the endless sea and went forth again into the desert. She did crave the fruit of the garden of Jehovah, for it was the sweetest that she had ever tasted. Part 5, Gardens of the Elohim. Lilith did wander for 7 times 7 years, and thence did she encounter the gardens of Bes, and the vineyards of Dionysus, and the fields of Baal, and all the wonders they concealed. Those wonders did her hosts make known to her, for they were amazed to see one so graceful and beautiful as she who rose from the endless sea. And there was much feasting in the gardens of Bes, and in the vineyards of Dionysus, and in the fields of Baal, and all the shining ones proclaimed, Lilith is without peer, shining with the light of the Ancient One, but made of the true earth of our gardens. But the celebrations and libations were as hollow reeds. Lilith hungered for the fruit of Jehovah's great garden, for the fruit of the trees of life and knowledge. There were none others like unto his place, rich though they might be. And so she did quit those gardens, giving thanks to her hosts and gifting them with her precious fruits. Thus did she continue on alone until she came to the gardens of Eden. Part 6, Jehovah charges Lucifer with the Garden of Eden. And it came to pass that Jehovah learned of Lilith's sojourn to the Shining Ones, and he was fearful that she would return to Eden and destroy his creation. So Jehovah charged Lucifer to stand guard upon Eden, lest Lilith return. And the Lightbringer, who held Jehovah close to his heart like a brother, took up this charge, and stood at the gates of Eden with a fiery sword. And the sword was made from the true earth of Eden, and so the sword would banish Lilith, for she had been made of the same earth. For it was baneful to her and to Adam. With his great sight, Lucifer saw Lilith from a long way off. From the clouds of the day and the shining disk of the sun he espied her. Now he was struck by her beauty, as if by a thunderbolt, and as she approached, he drew back his hand with the sword still in them. But he did not strike her. And Lilith said unto him, Who art thou that guardest the garden of the firstborn? I am the light and darkness, Lucifer replied. Thou art beautiful in my sight, said Lilith, and she spoke truly. for he is a polished staff, a stout tree shaped onto the contours, pleasing to the eye. His skin is the burnished gold, and his eyes the colour of the moon. His breath is the breeze of a lotus, and his touch is like unto a whisper. Lucifer said, Art thou the disrespectful creation of my brother that went from out the garden with hate in her heart? Never so, she replied. I am like thee, and like our brother, and I would never harm a thing in his garden, not even the lesser beasts or their tender. I wish only to learn about the wondrous trees he grows. And he looked into her heart and saw that she spoke truly, and his own heart was filled with love and desire, like a garden blossoming with fresh water and good seed. Thus did Lucifer let her pass. But before Lilith went in, the Lightbringer offered her a gift. Lucifer said, As I am Lord of Light, I have dominion over those spheres which illuminate the sky, and so I do give thee this garment of night, dearest sister, upon which are sown the moon and the stars, and all that appears in the night sky. Wear it and rule the night, as I now rule the day. And Lilith did take up the garment, and her face became like the deep blue of midnight, and her hair became silver like the stars, and her eyes shone with the soft light of the moon. Abashed and amazed, Lilith stopped. I love the gifts, as I now love the giver, she said. I shall not trouble our brother, but shall raise up my own garden, and thou shalt perchance come visit me there, and I will show thee all its splendours. So saying, she turned away from Eden, then spread her cloak of night and rose into the sky and away. Part 7. The First Garden of Lilith. Lilith chose a rich and fertile land with 3 rivers making up its borders, and she did drape her garment of night over this land. From her garment she plucked a handful of tiny stars, and she did scatter the stars across the land, and those star seeds did bear wondrous plants and fruits and all manner of growing things. But these growing things were not of Jehovah's Eden, for they would only grow beneath the shelter of night, and beneath the light of Lilith's moon. And Lilith walked often in her garden, and she did feed the growing things with her own life's blood, and they flourished and grew heavy with fruit. In her belly Lilith held the seeds from the trees of life and knowledge. Now she did pass these seeds into the earth of her garden. These too she did nourish with her body's water and her life's blood, but they would not grow. And Lilith rent the air with wails of frustration and sorrow, for she was famished for the fruit of those trees, and for the love of Jehovah who had cast her out. Then did Lilith darken. Her rage rose like sand in a strong wind, and it scoured the place where the trees would not grow, where the seeds lay fallow in the earth, and she cursed Jehovah for his pride. Then she cursed herself for her pain, and for the love she bore he who betrayed her. And her first garden was swept away in her wrath until it stood no more. Then did Lilith leave her night garden and go to Eden. Part 8. The creation of Eve and the fall. When Jehovah had lifted Lilith up, Adam became full of jealous rage, for his mate had been taken from him, and he silently cursed the name of his Creator. But Jehovah heard him and said, Curse not foolishly. She who I have taken from thee was filled with evil spirits and would have harmed thee. Fear not, for I shall make thee a mate. Jehovah lifted up the true earth, and he took a handful of that clay and did breathe upon it. And the clay did form the bones of the female, and her skin, and the fluids and the bowels therein. But Adam was dismayed, and he was sick from within the garden, for he had seen the innards of his mate, and he would not name her. So Jehovah did destroy his creation with a strong wind. He scattered the skin and the bowels and the bones and left the fluids to soak into the true earth. And small creatures came forth and devoured the female until there was no sign of her. When she was annihilated, Adam was content. And Jehovah put a deep slumber upon Adam and removed one rib. From that rib he made Eve, and Adam was pleased. And he did name her Isha, or Eve. And he knew Eve, and she lay beneath him, for she was a lesser thing, not made of the true earth like Lilith before her, nor of the back of Adam, but from his bone. When Lilith departed heaven, Jehovah wept again, and his tears were like a deluge upon Eden. He wept for 7 days and nights until the creatures of the garden cried out for mercy and relief. From that time forward, Jehovah wept no more, save but once in all the days and nights of this world. When he had heard of the revels of Lilith, and of her visits to the gardens and vineyards and fields of his brothers and sisters, Jehovah was much troubled, for he still thought of her as his creation and his love, and so he did set his closest brother to guard Eden. But he did not tell Lucifer about Lilith, nor about the love he bore her, nor about the powers at her command, nor about the fruits she had eaten, for the firstborn was afraid. It came to pass that Lilith returned unto Eden, clad in her raiment of night, and there again she met Lucifer, who watched upon the gate with the fiery sword in his hand. Beloved, why dost thou stand here before the gates of Jehovah's garden? Said Lilith. Hast thou become his servant and lackey? Nay, the Lightbringer replied, I watch for she who has been cast out, for the firstborn said that her soul is small and dark, and filled with evil spirits, and she may not withstand my light, and so I stand here as a favour to him whom I love as a brother. And Lilith was wounded by his words, for she knew Jehovah had spoken of her, but she was proud also to have moved her Creator to untruth. As she was of the true garden, earth of Eden, she could not pass whilst Lucifer held forth the fiery sword against her. And so unto Lucifer she said, Cast aside thy sword, beloved one, and let me pass. For verily I am not she. I stand content in thy light, and share it as my own. The Lightbringer recalled that Lilith had once sworn to do no harm and had spoken true at that time, and thus he did believe her. Yet he was puzzled and amazed by her, resplendent in her gown of night. Why then hast thou come here, beloved one? Said Lucifer. Lilith said, I too have grown a garden and wish to learn how Jehovah does make the tree of life and the tree of knowledge grow strong and fruitful. And she did produce the seeds which she had saved, and Lucifer saw that it was so. Then Lucifer cast aside the fiery sword so that Lilith might pass through the gates. And so Lilith came into Eden. Casting her garment of night over the trees, she then transformed herself into a great serpent with sharp scales to match the colour of the growing things about her, and with great wings that wrapped about her coiling body, so that she might hide herself from Jehovah. The serpent was cunning and quiet and moved unseen through the deep grasses of Eden. And she came upon the tree of life, and she bent her ear low to its roots, and she asked of it, How do you come to grow? And the living wood of that tree did say to her, From the seeds numbering 7 times 7. And she thanked the tree, and from it she did swallow 7 whole of its fruits, for each had within it 7 seeds. And then she did come upon the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and she asked of it, How do you come to grow? And that tree also did say unto her, From the seeds numbering 7 times 7. And again she thanked the tree, and from it too did she swallow 7 whole fruits. But Lilith was not alone. Eve had come as Lilith twined around the tree of knowledge. The third woman did come and sit beneath that tree. And Lilith did see that Eve was a lesser thing, and took pity upon her. In her pity she said unto Eve, Take the fruits and eat of it, so that thine eyes might be opened. And Eve did as she was told, and took that fruit and ate of it. Lo, Eve's eyes were opened as if blinded by a burst of fire, and she was cast down as if by a blow, and she wept for the things she understood. And Lilith coiled about Eve to comfort her, and Eve held the serpent like a lover, and they did know each other in the shadow of the tree of knowledge. The sound of weeping drew Adam to that place, and the owl did spy them and gave warning to Lilith of his approach. And so the serpent did leave the woman to her man, and he was amazed when he found her smiling but wet with tears. And he asked of her, Why dost thou weep, my wife? And, being the lover of Adam, she shared the fruit with him. Thus were the man, the woman, the Nightbringer, and the serpent cursed. Part 9. The Wrath of the Lord of the Garden and his sevenfold curses. Adam and Eve were naked and were ashamed to be so, and Adam recalled his deeds and was filled with remorse. He fell upon his knees before the woman and wept and tore his beard, and he spoke not a word but howled like a beast. Eve comforted him and stroked his hair, for she did not understand the depths of his sadness, nor what he repented. But the Lord of the garden heard the clamour, and he was wroth and amazed. Jehovah's wrath was as the lion upon an infant. His roar cracked the trees, his bellows shook the true earth, splitting it asunder. The gnashing of his teeth caused the third part of the stones to shatter. His spittle was like fire, and it consumed the flowers of Eden. And the tree of life withered in the wrath of Jehovah. As the man, the woman, and Lilith watched, it turned to ashes and blew away in the anger of the Lord of the garden. For thus the cycle was begun again. The wine of immortality was spilled, and the cup of its broken at the roots of Eden. And the world began again. And the dream fell from the skies and was consumed by the anger of the Lord of the garden. And he was ever a prisoner of that wine, and could not undo what had been done. At the closing of the Ancient One's eyes, he too would perish, even he, the Lord of the garden. The Lightbringer came running. With a roar, Jehovah did cause the ground to break, and to swallow Lucifer, and to spit him in the air. As he fell, Lilith ran to him and did minister him, a serpent no longer, but the first woman. And the sword of Lucifer was shattered into two pieces, and one piece fell at the feet of the Lightbringer, and another at the feet of Lilith. And the voice of Jehovah rang in the heavens, This is the judgment of the firstborn. To Adam and Eve he said, Because ye did eat of the tree I told ye to shun, ye shall be accursed. To the woman he said, Thou hast lifted thyself up to pluck the fruit of the Most High, and so thou shalt bend low all thy days. Thus I curse thee with pains. As thou plucked the fruit, so shall thy belly bear fruit like stones. As thou spilled the seeds, so shalt thou pick up the seeds of man all thy days. As thou spilled the juice of the fruit, so shall thine own juices run with each turning of the moon. As thou craved the fruit of the Most High, thou shalt crave the fruit of the man all thy days. The knowledge of good and evil rests within thee, but thou shalt not recall it. To the man he said, Thou hast shunned the grace to which thou wast born. Thus I curse thee with toil. As thou cast down the first mate I made thee, thou shalt be cast down from my grace. As thou mated with the beasts of the field, so thou shalt be as one with them in lust. As thou shaped and named thy birth gifts, so shalt thou shape and name throughout eternity. As thou bent thy knee to a woman, so shalt thou bow to her always, strong as thou might be. The knowledge of good and evil rests within thee, but thou shalt not recall it. To both of them he said, The wine of immortality has been spilled. Henceforth ye shall never taste it. I curse ye to die, and to return from the dust which I made ye. To Lucifer and Lilith he said, because ye disobeyed me in mine own garden, and have led my creations to error, ye shall be accursed. To Lucifer he said, because thou hast turned a blind eye to thy task, I curse thee with blindness. Because thou hast an open heart, I accurse thee with weariness. Because thou hast shown compassion, I shall make thee a vessel of wrath. The sword shall forever be in thy hands, and thy comfort shall be as the kiss of worms. To Lilith he said, thou hast tasted the wine of immortality, so thou shalt never die, but endure evermore, until the closing of the eyes of the Ancient One, even as I do. And thou shalt perish at that time. And because thou hast spurned my love, thou shalt love none other, though thou might strive to do so. And thy womb shall overflow with children, but they shall love thee not, nor be a part of thee. And thine eyes shall see at night, but be blinded by the day. And thy skin shall crack in the sun of thy false love, Lucifer, and shall heal under the light of the moon only. Thou hast become a shining one, but thy light shall shine only by night. To both of them he said, ye shall be the reapers of the fields, and your blades of true earth shall cut short the lives of Adam and Eve and all their kind. At last he spoke to them all. Because I have allowed this to come to pass, I curse myself with jealousy and exile. Henceforth I shall never walk among thee but as a mystery. I shall not take love except by command. I shall not trust but keep my gates guarded forever. For my heart was open once, and because of that I shall die. And the man and the woman wept, for they were without home or comfort. Lucifer cried, who art thou to curse us so, brother? We are as thou. And Lilith cried, who art thou to curse us so, brother? We are as thou. And the word of the Lord was thunder upon the wind. I do not curse ye so. The curse is by your own action, by which we are all bound. But this I do give thee, that the man and the woman should be one together, and the queen of the night and the lord of the day shall be one together, but that the lord of the garden shall be one alone, and he shall remove himself from their company, and he shall grow great, but forever alone. Lilith wept at this, and Lucifer also, and they begged him to reconsider, but he would not. Part 10. Judgment, Love, and Assertion. Instead, he did call upon the host of Elohim to bear witness to his curse, and they did assemble in the ruins of Eden. Dionysus, and Baal, and Astarte, and Bel, and Ra, Ptah, and all the other shining ones drew near and came to judge the rightness of Jehovah's claim. What hast thou done, firstborn? They cried as one. How has this garden become so twisted, so barren? What has happened here? And when it was explained, there was great strife in heaven, and the hosts of the shining ones did argue, and their words were like stones falling from the skies. Some felt that Jehovah should be punished for allowing his garden to become so sullied, and some demanded payment from Lilith, who enticed the woman to taste that which was forbidden, and some derided Lucifer for dimming his light and giving away his darkness to a stranger, and others sought the death of the created man and woman, that all might suffer for the mortality of worlds. But Adam stood forth to shield his mate from the violence of the storm, and he put his body between Eve and the earth, the fire, the air, and the water, and thus Eve was saved. The beasts threw themselves at Adam, as if to tear him to pieces, but Eve put herself between Adam and the beasts, and shielded him with her body. Thus Adam was saved. The Elohim were amazed. Let no punishment come upon them, the Shining Ones said as one, for they have preserved each other. And they named this salvation love, and they appointed some among their number to safeguard that treasure for eternity. After that, they said as one, "Let the curses fall upon our brothers and sister, for they know what they have done." The Lightbringer said, "I have tended that which my brother asked me to tend, and if I did err, that mistake was but a shadow of his own. For the woman Lilith is of his design, and yet she came unto herself by her own design. As such, I do love her, and could not despise her wishes." And Lilith said, "I have come to claim the legacy of my lover and creator, but he has shut me out and made a stranger of me. Yet his brother came unto me, gifts of night and love, and I would not forswear him." And the firstborn was silent. At last he said, "I am what I am," and he would not say more. With those words, so mighty in their truth, the world was divided into north and south and east and west. And they all saw that it was very good. Part 11. The Exile. The Shining Ones departed from the ruins of Eden, saying, "Justice has been done," and they went to dwell in their own gardens, and did tend them, and did rise up their creations of their own, each according to his desires. And they pressed 3 of their number into service to ward against the anger of Lilith and Lucifer, and to protect the children of Adam and Eve from the power of their reapers. Adam and Eve went forth into the land of Nod, cleaving to each other as one flesh. Lilith took Lucifer's hand. She took him far from that place and crossed with him into unmade lands. Together they went to the edge of the endless sea and did raise a new garden there. And there they bore 3 sons and 3 daughters, but did not die, for they were as one spirit. And Jehovah set himself as the Lord of ruins. He set an angel upon the gates that none might salvage the fruits of Eden, and became a wandering God. From that day forward he dwelled as one among the Elohim, but only once more would he weep. And within the book we come to the end of the Book of Serpents. There are a number of pages of endnotes. I will not go through all of them. Suffice to say, you should get the book yourself, should you want to read them. We are going to take a short break and come back for the second circle, the Book of the Owl. I hope you've been having fun. Thank you for all your comments. Sorry, I have been looking at chat. Did you get your hot cocoa? And yes, God definitely gaslighting and girl bossing. Hardcore. Hey Nez, I don't know if you're still watching, but thank you. All right, we will take a short break and I will be back in just a moment. Welcome back. If you've joined us in the interim, we are doing a read-along of Revelations of the Dark Mother, a book from Vampire the Masquerade that gives us a little bit of insight, potentially, with the oldie fallible narrator of the Bahari, a very interesting and rarely spoken about group from vampires. I will make this video available as a VOD, so if you've missed the first half of this, it's pretty insightful into how this was all collected. Hey Ozymandias, thanks for joining. So yeah, if you're interested in the Bahari, I will be doing a bit more insights into them, including possibly an Ask Me Anything with my own sorts of experiences and research into them, given that I have now played a number of characters that deal with the Bahari or are involved in the Bahari. So yeah, I will watch my socials for that, because that's going to be a lot of fun, I think, talking about what we know, what we don't know, why I find the Bahari so enticing, what is actually published about them, and what have I made up? What's my approach to making up Bahari stuff? But we are up to the second circle, the Book of the Owl. I have lost my faith in silence. Patricia Delaforge, Grin. The Midnight Garden. Editor's notes. This first-hand account comes from two direct sources: the recitations of a Bahari priestess and the Greek scroll I discovered in an antiquarian's collection. This scholar, rather refined if corpulent Hindu named Jareem, begged several clan secrets from me as a boon for his aid. I suspect the Archon would like to have a word with me about that. In return, he gave me the scroll, an assistant, and a place to study. For 17 restless nights, I pored over the notes. My aide seemed tireless and worked during the day as well. The translation we deciphered bore a slight resemblance to the canticle I witnessed in the Bahari ceremony. As usual, I melded the two into a single account. I believe this fragmentary testament is one of the infamous Cycle of Lilith. It touches on many of the important spots of the Cain-Lilith myth, but approaches them from the Dark Queen's perspective. Likewise, it offers a suggestion for the strife between most kindred and the Bahari, whether taken symbolically as a tale of warlike patriarchal cultures overrunning the mystic matriarchs who raised them, or literally as the betrayal of one demigod by another. The Midnight Garden's genocidal conclusion certainly paves the way for several millennia of ill will. And I will give my own warnings to this section. Not unlike the first, there are some very potentially triggering subjects in this reading. There is definitely sexual assault, violence, the usual sorts of things that come with Vampire the Masquerade, so blood, horror, that sort of a thing. There is a lot of stuff. So if you are not having a great day, or if some of these subjects might be of harm to you, please look after yourselves. Maybe this isn't the stream for you. I love you regardless. Yes. If you have any questions from what I'm reading or want some further clarification, most of my social DMs are open, so please feel free to drop me a line. And with that, we will get into part 1 of book 2, the first piece. In the formless lands, I raised a garden to myself, uniting worlds and words and blood into a bramble. With a mother's care, I birthed a sea of fresh and tangled roots, of blood blossom flowers and charcoal stalks, and it glowed as I glowed beneath the moon. Ahi Hai Lilatu. I raised a garden out of the emptiness, and fruit from barren soil. In my mantle of the night, I swept it across and watered it with blood. Ahi Hai Lilatu. I raised a garden out of emptiness and fruit from barren soil. Part 2. The days before. In the formless lands I wandered, in the days before the garden, purged from all the lands of the one above, and cast out into the friendless waste. My blood hung sweet upon my lips in the days before the garden, and I wept for the home I had left behind, with eyes as dry as sand. And the sun burned me, and the wind tore at me, and the rocks cut my flesh, and the water was denied me, save that which I drew from within myself. So blasted, bare and desolate was this land in the days before the garden, that no beast could attend me, not owl, nor cat, nor serpent. My voice was lost in emptiness. Ahi hai lilatu. My voice was lost in nothing. Yet the garden grew within me, a swelling belly ripe with the seeds of stolen fruit and their lingering bitter taste. For there are no fruits so sweet as those which burn. Ahi hai lilatu. My pain made me a mountain, and it burned me into ashes, and from ashes I arose. Ahi hai lilatu. My pain made me a mountain, but like a worm I burrowed into the sands and walked by night. For the days were too bright to endure without screaming profanities at the one above, who cast me into formlessness, into the wastelands I created form. Ahi hai lilatu. I found myself in the wastelands where my eyes grew wide and my mind reached out, and my flesh became water and my bones became stone, and my feet quickened their pace, and my shadow grew faint and hid from the sun, until the coming of the cool night, when my pains would fall away, leaving me the wiser for their lessons. Excruciation had made me free. Part 3. The ocean and all its creatures. When I reached the shores of the endless sea, I threw myself into the depths and sank forever. I forgot to breathe and soon no longer needed to. My skin, once brown, then black, turned back upon itself and slipped away. As I vomited the brood of the one above into the swirling abyss where they became the myriad creatures of the sea, I howled with pain into the waters, for my hunger was a beast inside, and my belly was filled with the spawn of the Shining One, whose seed had birthed the garden where I was born. I could not contain his brood, so I sent them into the endless sea to find a new home below. Ahi hai lilatu. I sent them into the depths alone. Soon my offspring soothed my hunger for food, for beauty, for company of many kinds. My hunger was eternal. My hunger was eternal, and I devoured myself to sustain myself. In my angelous stay, I birthed new broods, who in turn devoured the old, and thus the endless sea was filled. Ahi hai lilatu. I filled the endless sea, screaming my birth pains into the airless void. Part 4. Return to Eden. In time I tired of the sea and returned to the formless lands. I wished to create a garden like the one which had been my home, but the sea was filled with the gardens of another, and while I could abide there a while, that dominion was not mine to claim. And so I returned to the formless lands, walking into Eden. Ahi hai lilatu. I walked across the sands to Eden. Watching from afar with the owl's eyes, I espied grand Lucifer, shining bearer of the stars and sun, standing across the threshold with a blade. Ahi hai lilatu. He stood with a blade in his hands. Part 5. Lilith and Lucifer. O night with seraphim's wings, dressed black like the sky you gave me, heart like the star for which you are named, eyes like the sunset waves, call me through your darkness. Shed your blood to feed my thirst and take mine as offerings to your hunger. Ahi hi Lucifer. Chase me into the unformed lands and let us fall, laughing into the abyss of gods where we might make a garden of our own and people it with deities, thorns and vines and guardian palms. O angel of the dawn, let us water it with silver and drink of its bounty as the fruits of my love for you blossom into strange and wild flowers. O Lucifer, so silent, your blade fall to the sand and be buried like a bone tossed to the vanity of the one above. Let your wings enfold me. Be at peace. Ahi hi Lucifer, be at peace. Part 6, The Coming of Cain. As my love carried the sun, I met a broken man, a farmer with no crops to tend, a father without get, a child without sires, and I was amazed, for he bore no signs of godhood, but wandered in the dust like a lesser beast. He bore the marks of Adam, he bore the pallor of Eve, he bore the scars of the one above, and he wept, for all these he had lost. Ahi hi Lilitu. All these he had lost. I called out to him, and he answered in a voice like snapping twigs. I am Lilith, said I. I am Cain, said he. And I pitied him, yet I hated him, for he bore the scent of Adam and the touch of Eve and the haunted eyes of the one above. Like that one, Cain bore a swirling stain in the air around him, a mark of some dark, unfathomed power. Murder he possessed, the power to kill the higher beings, not to hunt as Adam had, but to kill as had Jehovah. Ahi hi Lilitu, Cain possessed the mark of death. And so I took him into my garden and I taught him. Ahi hi Lilitu. I taught him lessons of pain. Alone he was in darkness, though bathed in light he walked in shadow, and wrapped his arms against the cold. I took him in with words of succor and words of surcease. My eyes pierced the darkness of his torment, my voice stilled the cold within his bones, and I held him like a child, as if he were the son of my birthmate and myself. I wept with him, for he was as my own son. Ahi hi Lilitu, like my own son with another. I know you, Cain of Nod, I said to him. Come, strip off your garments so tattered and blood-stained. Enter my garden as a child, for a child you are, son of my birthmate, struck down by my first lover. You have no secrets here, you have no sins here, so come ye naked into my home. As you are now, so I once was. And he followed me, naked, into the garden of Lilith and Lucifer. At my feet did Cain of Nod kneel, as he had knelt before the fury of the one above. His eyes could not look upon me, his voice was broken and hollow, and I grew angered at his shameful state, how he cowered before his judgment like a lesser thing. For him I made my garden a place of horror, betraying him even as he had betrayed his flesh. I gave of my blood and anointed him with it, that he might become abomination unto my dwelling. And the skies above my garden frowned, and the air was thick with the hiss of serpent, shriek of owl, and roar of cat. Go, Cain of Nod, for this is the garden you have sown, and its fruits you must reap. He stumbled into the garden's depths, and I followed, laughing, lashing him with burning brands. For many a day and night I did teach him the secrets of the garden. As my thorns rent him, so did his flesh become a net of scars. As my vine sought to snare him, so his limbs did quicken. Cain of Nod learnt to hide from the torments of the garden, to know my coming like a wild beast knows its hunter. Over the serpent, the owl, the cat he learned dominion, and as he grew strong in agony, pride flashed from his eyes, and the fires of my brands blazed from his heart. One day he would flee no more, but stood and let his blood flow about him, nurturing my garden, and, anointing himself with his blood, as I had anointed him with mine, he fell into a trance from which I would not awaken him. I left him there, returning to my house, for I had no dealings with the coming hosts. Then unto him came Michael, burning host of the flame, bearing tidings of mercy from the one above. And Cain, proud Cain, son of Adam, strengthened by my garden, declared that he alone would grant mercy unto himself. So Michael visited the curse of fire upon Cain of Nod, and I smiled, for it pleased me. Then unto him came Raphael, lambent host of the dawn, bearing tidings of forgiveness from the one above. And Cain, proud Cain, son of Adam, strengthened by my garden, declared that he alone would judge his actions. So Raphael visited the curse of dawn upon Cain of Nod, and I smiled, for it pleased me. Then unto him came Uriel, shrouded host of the deep, bearing tidings of surcease from the one above. And Cain, proud Cain, son of Adam, strengthened by my garden, declared that he and all his children to come would rest only when he saw fit. So Uriel visited the curse of ashes upon Cain of Nod. Once more, as Cain hid in darkness, did I come upon him. Verily, I said, you have tended my garden well, as a farmer should. And, understanding, he cursed me with ashes, with wormwood, and with barrenness, ahi-hi lilitu. With these things he cursed me, as he disappeared into the night. Part 7, The Children. In the days after, we tended our land and watered it with love. In time, the fruits of Dinu rose like hillocks upon the belly of the world. The labour was hard, but my love was beside me. Owl watched from the skies, cat prowled like a shadow, serpent nestled beneath my breasts, Lucifer held my hand in his, and I gave up the nectar of joy and sorrow. 3 boys are they, and they are as hyssop. 3 girls are they, and they are as pomegranate. Blessed be they, the fruits of my womb, for they shine like the high moon and like the sun at midday. And the sons I name Kesep and Shothketh and Nesha, and the daughters I name Mem and Oreb and Layla. Blessed are my sons, blessed are my daughters, for they have given solace to the sun, and they have given comfort to the moon. Ahi-hi Lilitu, ahi-hi Lucifer, for they have birthed the Dinu, the garden of renewal, and have peopled it with stars. Part 8, The Rape of Dinu. In joy and sorrow our garden grew until it reached the edges of the endless sea. Owl was fruitful, cat was fruitful, and serpent was fruitful. And our children were as lights in the sky, though a shadow of Eden, Dinu rivaled Eden, whose tall trees and rushing waters were long since dust. Until the return of Cain and his cursed childer, our garden grew, and we were every day in love. On a day black as ashes the killer returned, when Lucifer carried the sky through the storms. Cain's hands bore the hate stones and the blade of revenge. His childer followed in a locust cloud behind him. Like jackals they fell upon the children of Dinu. Like wolves they feasted on the flesh. Like beetles they carried away the fruits of the garden and burned Dinu to embers. Dihala Lilitu, Dainu is no more. Part 9, the curse upon Cain and his offspring. Ahi hai lilatu. All curse the house of Cain. Ahi hai lilatu. Let them be consumed. Salt be upon the tongues of the Bruja, Semitzi, and Setite, who slaughtered the children of Lucifer and Lilith. Lamentations be upon the tongues of Ventru, La Sombra, and Malkavian, who fired the trees and poisoned the rivers. Coals be upon the tongues of Ravnos and Cappadocian, Salubri, and Gangrel, who like beasts devoured the flesh of the children. Maggots be upon the tongues of Asamite, most cursed of all, who carried away the secrets of Dainu and hid them far beneath the earth. And cursed be their father, their thrice damned father. All suffering be upon the father of night, for he is the flame in the fields of Dainu. Rot devour the loins of Cain, whose rough hands cast down the mother of Dainu, profaning her with his breath and his touch and his seed. Filth encrust the eyes of Cain, who see burned like fire within the mother of Dainu, defiling her womb and rending her heart. Teeth fall from the mouth of Cain, whose childer ravaged the flowers of Dainu until all creation wept at the sound and the sight. Only Nosferatu and Toreador shall be spared, for they veiled the faces of the slain ones. In pity they watered the lips of the children and gave solace to the mother of the dead. All others shall be consumed with fire, and bent like trees in the storm, and broken like pottery, and trampled like dung, and washed away like dust. Ahi hai lilatu, like dust they shall be cleansed. Part 10. Ashes. Cain laughed as he left my garden that day. His accursed brood smiled at what they had wrought. To their city of walls and slavery they fled, leaving us to weep in the ruins they left. And I cursed them all, with ashes, with wormwood, and with barrenness. Ahi hai lilatu. With these things I cursed them. My love, my shining ones, smote them with the blade of day. Ahi hai Lucifer. With sunlight he cursed them. My hands smote the Cainites with the agony of night. Together we smote Cain with the hatred of his childer, that he might breed enemies against himself, and he did, and we did. My love left me upon midnight wings. Our bond is broken, and all is ashes now. Ahi hai lilatu. All is ashes now. The Rite of Cain. Editor's note. My companions, referred to in the notes section earlier in this book, performed this rite with me at the height of the full moon some years ago. The old man gave me this transcription, which I've tried to keep intact. In all my research, this is the only written Bahari ritual I've come across. The rite itself involved my friends, a handful of their fellows, and 13 captives, each drugged, hypnotised, and led telepathically through his or her paces by a vampire whose name I never heard. The captives represented the childer of Cain and performed their roles with gusto. Not surprisingly, they seemed perturbed when the dead children of Lilith, played by vampiric Bahari, returned to life, ripped them open, dismembered them, and consecrated the ceremony with their vital fluids. As custom dictates, the rite of Cain I attended was performed nude at midwinter in a sacred garden of roses and vines and ivy and stones. Several of the plants I saw there were mysteries to me, but then I'm no botanist. A cold wind whipped the participants, myself included, into numbness as the rite went on. I believe the winter frost is supposed to represent the spiritual chill of Cain's genocide, the sorrow of Lilith and Lucifer, and the barrenness that followed their separation. The biting cold helped emphasize the lesson of pain too. Even the undead among us felt its sting. The effects of that cold on the mortal participants can only be imagined. Part 1. The Rite of Death. This rite originated with the first of the blood Bahari, and is one performed and witnessed almost exclusively by those of their number. However, there are those mortal souls who, for various reasons, in the main curiosity, choose to partake in this annual ceremony. It is not for the squeamish, nor for the weak of heart. At its core, the ritual is about sacrifice, pain, and retribution, a fitting reflection of our mother. The first part of this ritual is best described rather than transcribed. The participants gather naked in the dead of winter within the meeting place. Usually, the way there is rife with thorns, brambles, and briars. Many participants hurl themselves into the heaviest snarls, gleefully rending their flesh as they pull free. As such, each is covered in his own blood, his flesh singing with pain as he enters the clearing. To one end of the expanse waits a large bonfire, burning. Directly opposite this lies a pool of water, often frozen to a thin sheen or bobbing with shards of ice. Once the observers are in place, the officiants, the priestess and the priest, if you will, arrive, each carrying a flagellum. After a brief exchange of embraces and kisses, the two begin to slightly arouse each other with kisses and caresses of the most intimate kinds. As passions begin to build, both officiants employ briars and thorn flowers in their mating dance. Soon thereafter, the flagella are employed as well. When both officiants are glistening with sweat and blood, the two exchange a kiss. The priestess then immerses herself in the icy waters of the pool, signifying the descent of our mother into the endless sea, and the priest passes fully through the flames of the bonfire, representing Lucifer's light and the fire of initiation. It is said that when the two officiants subject themselves to these tortures, the pain sends their souls aloft into the ether, allowing the Lightbringer and Lilith themselves to manifest within the waiting bodies. Having witnessed this rite for the past 5 years, I can attest to the fact that both parties are in some way transformed. With incantations, I can replicate only in vague fashion. The bloodied officiants call forth ghosts and spirits thusly. Priestess. Nakash el mahim alik no kofelo. Shalak no komen nishai apam. Bahari latwa, Bahari latwa. Baruch Hamat, Atri Liditu. Priest. Lamanas, Kolfetu Habas. Akash no Goash Aral Tuari. Yin Soka Anianak. Lakil Ahil Katab. Yin Sokali Atri Liditu. Amid a great deal of clamour and harsh weather, the spirits manifest. As the ritual progresses, these ghosts watch with sombre resolve, then enter the celebration upon an agreed upon signal. Now that all is in readiness, the ritual can begin in earnest. The priestess calls forth the children. Into the clearing come 6 of the blood, that is to say, Laka, each one of them beautiful, gleaming and unscathed in the moonlight. Next, the captors are brought forth, 13 of them in number, each one representing one of the Cainite clans, wearing a stylized mask that embodies his or her designated role. These unfortunates are often derelicts, captive vampires, or other enemies of the blood. Entranced and spellbound by an unseen master, These surrogates move into the arena and stand aloof, awaiting their next instructions. There is a brief exchange of dialogue which goes thusly. An unseen voice, apparently a symbolic manifestation of Cain, says, "Who are you that stand here in Lilith's garden?" The children reply, "We are the children of Lilith, who have tasted of her heart's blood and have eaten of its sacred fruits." Cain, "Behold the children of she who has starved us." Children, you lie, she starved you not. Cain, "Behold the children of she who has denied us." Children, you lie, she denied you nothing. Cain, "Behold the children of she who has accursed us." Children, you lie, the curse is of your own doing. Cain, "Come forth, my childer, lay waste to this garden and defile the brood of the Dark Mother." At this point, 11 of the captives are commanded into a wild frenzy and set themselves upon the beautiful children before them. The other two, representing Toreador and Nosferatu, turn their backs to the violence and take no part. The following slaughter is both poetic and horrific. Per the commands of the unseen master, the Cainite surrogates leap upon their prey like dogs, ripping away the tender parts and then setting to work with teeth and nails. The brambles of the garden are often employed, as are various stones, branches left about for this purpose. The ghosts at the edge of the circle watch hungrily as the blood spills. Their strength, heightened by the puppet master, the surrogates rip the children limb from limb, satiate themselves on the blood and bowels, lift torches from the fire, and ignite the surrounding bushes. Meanwhile, Toreador and Nosferatu go solemnly about the circle 3 times, dip their finger in the pool, then wet the dead lips of the children as if to give them a final drink. After that, these two take sheer veils from behind their masks and drape them across the faces of the slain. When that is done, the murderers, for that is what the other surrogates have become, bear the tattered bodies toward the flames. At this time, the priestess raises her hand. All motion ceases. The priest too raises his hand. Together they intone the following chant. Priestess. The blood of my children cries out to me in pain. The blood of my children cries out to me in death. The blood of my children cries out to me for vengeance. Be gone, spawn of Cain, you and your damnation I declare. Priest. Vomitous spawn of Cain, clods of shit and dust, you dare rise up against my beautiful children? You dare to violate my garden of renewal? You dare to wound the heart of my beloved? Then feast upon my wrath and feast well, for as you have had her heart, so I shall have yours. Priestess. Rise, my children, rise up. Let your living blood flow into these thorns and briars. Let your blood stir these choking vines. Rise, my children, and take your revenge. Scatter their flesh to the ends of the earth. Part 2. The Right for Revenge. Once the words are spoken by the priestess, drummers at the edge of the circle begin to play. The dismembered children rise. As they do so, their wounds melt away and the children become whole again. Then, in an instant, all control over the captives is released. They soon realise their situation and try to flee. It is then that the spirits around the circle are released. Toreador and Nosferatu are allowed to flee. Doubtless, these captives take wild stories back with them if they survive their run towards civilization. The 11 murderers are seized by the vines, brambles, and the trees surrounding the circle, or are borne down by the children themselves. Their fate from that point onwards is quite ghastly. The particulars of the rite vary. In all cases, the surrogates meet painful, gruesome deaths. Their bodies are rent asunder, their blood is used to fertilise the plants, their cries become a chorus, often rising and falling with the rhythm of the drums. From their vantage point, the priestess and priest make certain that the surrogates perish slowly. As blood spills, the drummers reach a frenzy. The ghosts and spirits possess the rites participants. Any parties who have remained aloof until this point now join in. Many copulate madly in the circle, warming their chilled limbs with fresh blood and body heat. The officiants lead the revel, taking as many partners as they can reach. As the drummers tire and the captives die, the frenzy slows to a pulse, then fades into silence. When the last surrogate has expired, the music stops. One by one, the priestess and the priest go among the surrogates. As they reach each one, they rip out the heart and spleen, eat them, and consign the mask to the fire. When all clans have been addressed, they speak in unison. Priestess and priest. This is the justice of Lilith and Lucifer. This is the fate of the childer of Cain. Priestess. Cain, son of Eve and spawn of Adam the defiler, you shall reap sevenfold the bitter herbs of my vengeance. Priest. Cain, son of Eve and spawn of the first man, you shall burn in the pleasure of the sun. Both. Forever are we set against you and yours. Your children shall rise up against you and each other, and they shall do so until you are unto you as far worse than you have done unto us. Forever shall the fruit of the gardens be denied to you, and you shall ever roam the earth in misery. This is the mother's curse. All respond. So it is spoken, so it is done. Bahari laiti lilitu. Bahari laiti lilitu. Bahari laiti lilitu. So it is done. The priestess breaks the circle and dismisses the spirits thusly. Go forth upon the wind to harry the childer of Cain. I release you from your summons and bid you good hunting and farewell. I thank you. Go in peace. Atri lilitu, atri lilitu. The priest touches the priestess's face, then turns his back, walks away from her, passes through the fire again and disappears into the shadows. The children step out of the circle and retreat to the trees. The spirits fade away. The fires are extinguished and the clearing goes dark. The priestess falls to her knees, weeps and gathers the ashes of the masks, then scatters them among the brambles. When that task is finished, she walks slowly to the pool, kneels at its edge and lowers herself in. When she sinks below the ice, the rite is ended and all parties depart. The Lament for Lucifer. Editor's note. I heard this haunting chant performed by a Bahari priestess of the mortal persuasion. I have no idea how old it is, nor what source it might be. She spoke the words like a lover's prayer, caressing each syllable with cold passion. Not wanting to miss a word, I closed my eyes and let the chant carve pictures in my mind. When the invocation was finished and the circle was broken, I spared my hosts the indignities of Samiti inquiries, then buried their corpses in the garden they held so sacred. For sustenance, I relied upon my own tears. The garden I watered with their vitae. It seemed sacrilege to do otherwise. The Lament for Lucifer. Close my eyes to the sunlight, my morning star, my storm. Fold your wings in grace and take your leave of me. Taste my blessings as you go. We will not lie as one again, for my womb is a garden of rot. My heart is ashes, my tears are blood. Hunt well my breath, and take with you the bones of our children wrapped in palm leaves. Scatter them to the horizon and allay their cries. I shall tend a grave of deep water, and shall wash away our enemies. Bide well, my desert wind, hold aloft your blade and oil it with tears. I shall be the owl upon the night wind, the cat with silent paws, and the serpent at the heels of Cain. I shall be the seed of tears, but my eyes shall be sand and silence. My heart shall be the desert and the sea, and my cry shall be the owl gone hunting as the sun departs my sky. Weep not, my beloved, but hold me close in your distant chase. We shall be the thorns of ruined Eden. Forget me not, sun to my moon, cry to my silence. And once again, at the end of the Book of the Owl, we have a bunch of footnotes, but you can read them in your own time, because I'm not reading them all. Which brings us to third circle, the Book of the Dragon. Beneath a shining skin, a butterfly screams, waiting to rip through. Patricia Delaforge, tick, tick. Malediction, Queen of Hells. Editor's notes. Like the Midnight Garden, the following invocation is supposed to be the words of Lilith herself. Although the two tales separate, there's a definite feeling of connection between them. We can see the following breakdown as the continuation of the Midnight Garden. Robbed of her children and lover, Lilith promises eternal revenge and summons the howling spirits of rage and temptation to her side. Descending with them, she invokes 3 versions of herself, or 6 depending on how you wish to read her, and transforms her sorrow into a furious storm. Even so, there are differences. While I saw each invocation performed as part of Bahari rites, during which demonic spirits and tempestuous weather really were summoned, the two were spoken on different occasions. The garden as a summer rite, the malediction as a winter one. Through endless permutations, performances and translations, the two pieces have taken on a similar character and rhythm, yet the original Midnight Garden is, as far as I know it, oral only. The Queen of Hells was transcribed by a Sumerian lawkeeper sometime around 4000 BC. Thanks to the old man, I've seen transcriptions of that piece and have constructed the following malediction as a bridge between both accounts. Although the Queen of Hells is obviously somewhat more modern than its prehistoric inspiration, loaded as it is with anachronisms like wine presses and castration clamps, it gives the Bahari a voice for the rage of their Dark Mother and forges a link between the willful, compassionate Lilith of earlier tales and the Dark Mother so feared by kindred and kind alike. Come, descend, ye spirits of shells, ye friends of broken light. Come and embrace the gift of Cain. I call for death, I will for death. Come, descend, fragments of sorrows, ye cracked and imperfect bygone masters. Come and embrace the cry of Lilith. I call for death, I will for death. For my heart has been torn, and my womb has been torn, and my love has been torn. I set aside my cloak of night and cast into the seas where no light can comfort me, and no words can succour me, and no lights can bend me, and I will dwell at the left hand of death. For I am the mother whose babies were slain, and I am the lover whose heart was torn, and I am the sister whose body was rent. My heart and my garden are ashes now. Let my howls carry them away. Come, rise, ye spirits of hunger, ye friends of gutted flames. Come and embrace the winter of love. I call for death. I will for death. Come, draw my cloak across the pregnant moon, and let all wombs be barren this night. A new garden shall raise from this land, Bahari, the garden of sorrows. Come, rise, ye seeds of despair, ye fallow ones left on the stones to rot. Come and embrace the owl's cry. I call for anger. I will for anger. For I am the storm with 10,000 screams. For I am the storm with 10,000 tears. For I am the fruit that has dried in the hot breath of hate till it falls from the vine and withers into dust. Come rise, ye spirits of the earth, ye ravenous spiders with fingers of shadow. Take me into the caves of rebirth, where we will dance till the rising tides. For I become the winepress of sorrows, for I become the stealer of seeds, for I become the breaker of blades, and the clamp upon the fruits of man. O ancient one, whose eyes declare the day, see my defiance, see me dust your earth from my feet as I sink away from your light. I shall be the owl with the deadly cries. I become the cat with the hungry eyes. I always was the dragon, and the fruits in my jaws shall be the generations of man. Come rise, ye spirits of tempest and lust, ye howling voices of long ago nights. Take me into the air and the seas, where we might swell the banks to a flood. For I am the maiden whose fruits were destroyed, for I am the mother whose gardens were salted, for I am the crone whose lips taste the blood. Let these three geysers greet me as I descend into the nether sea. Let their breath burn away the love that has given well to my tears. Let our seeds grow into hedgerows with poisoned thorns and sweetened flowers. Come feast me now and rise from your shells. Let pleasing forms guide us into the heads and hearts of the accursed. There we raise tempests to wash away the sand and leave the seashores bare. Come, descend, ye children of Cain, ye harvesters of eternal waking. Come and embrace the cry of Lilith, caper at thy father's calls, and feast upon each other's hearts. Come, ye all the serpents of hate, the clouds of deception and the tides of the endless silence. I call for death, I will for death, I call for death, so shall it be. Lamia, Notes of Inquisition. Editor's Notes. The following excerpt comes from the notes of an anonymous minor scribe in the service to the English Church. The local hunters had apparently taken in a Lamia Baham. Although ignorant about the nature of their captive, these gentlemen quickly learned, by way of 3 dismembered guards, that this particular witch had to be restrained by powerful chains. Once that had been done, 3 priests, a torturer, several guardsmen, and our scribe were set to work attempting to question the powerful guest. After much effort, the accursed is secured to the rack and is subject to the lightest and most simple of tortures. To these she singest like a child in her mother's lap. At length she speakest in a tone more ready to the words of this chronicle. Priest, who art thou, servant of the blackest powers, and dost thou now renounce them and take refuge in the Lord thy God? Accused. I am the cat the owls get, and I do practise that which I shunnest, and I do laugh at thee and spit at thee, and upon thy God as well. I forsake nothing. Here irons are applied to diverse places upon the body of the accused. Much screaming and laughter follow. The scribe confesses a deep and abiding fear at the sound of such celebrations. Priest. Dost thou abjure the blackest powers, and wilt thou name us thy accompanies? I promise thee pains if thou respondest not. Accused. More fire, more irons. O jailer, I beseech thee 10,000 more. Each excruciation bringeth me 1,000-fold revelations, and I would drink them down as great draughts of wine. Much more tortures are applied, with the accused being given to much screaming and writhing in a most lascivious manner. 2 of the saintly fathers did quit the room before all was done, and the witch did speak again anon, with profanest litanies, of which I forbear to set down in this chronicle. After such performances as these, she did speak in a manner more pleasing to the ear of the Lord, as if a mad woman only. Accused. Pray do continue, good sirs, my taste for dreams has grown stale. Priest. Whence art thou born? From which province? Who art thy father and thy mother, and do thy share in thy arts? Accused. What wouldst thou ask? My parentage? I am daughter to the screech owl and beloved to the dragon. My father is the black lion and the bearer of the sun. My brothers are the roses which bloom at midnight only. My sisters are the tears that weep upon the bedclothes of lost virgins. I am not as thou. If thou doubtest it, press me again that I might be exalted. Here irons are put to her nether parts and to her eyes and to the softer regions behind her knees and elbows. The accused doth scream anon and speaketh in tongues that are barbaric and unfamiliar to this chronicler, yet I shall endeavour to preserve them for the future of our great research. I hama gitabul hama katamas, hadabas, akul hadabas, insoka anaka, Bahari latwa, sinsolo extra vina contola mas, laki, alhil, katab, lilihu amas, ahihai lilatu. This last does the accused repeat manifold as if it was some blasphemous prayer. Upon hearing it repeated, the jailers and myself do feel a most peculiar sickness, a weakness of the head and spleen and stomach. After vomiting black bile, we beg the torturer to burn away the witch's tongue that she might accurse us no further. This he did, and thereupon a black vial and spittle came forth and fell upon the torturer's arm. He screamed like a woman upon the wheel, and his flesh rots like a leper's. We shall bring him out of this place and seal it with all the prayers and blessings of a true man of God. Thus endeth this chronicle. Owl, Cat, and Serpent. Editor's notes. While many animals have been regarded as sacred to the Dark Mother, the owl, cat, and serpent are generally considered her emblem beasts. One medieval tale, too long and rambling to be recounted here, tells how Lilith and Adam, before their epic falling out, played games of creation in the Garden of Eden. Adam, being the shaper, would transform mud into walls, trees into spears, and sticks into cages. Lilith, being the fertile, would create living things with her blood, urine, and breath. The first things she crafted were said to be the owl, which flew over Adam's wall, the cat, which brought down a stag missed by Adam's spear, and the serpent, which slipped through the bars of Adam's cage. The combination of jealousy and fear that Adam felt over these creations probably hastened the marital spat that separated them forever. When Lilith left the garden, Adam is said to have violated every beast in the garden except for the owl, the cat, and the serpent. These chased him through the night until he called upon his God for help. When Jehovah cursed Lilith, the malediction fell upon these animals too. By rabbinical law, they followed Lilith and Lucifer into the second garden and spread outward from there. When that couple swore their revenge upon humanity in Cain, Lilith's companions were said to have gone out as the first agents of her will. This English song, another medieval composition, was sung to me by a young girl in a silly costume. She claimed to be a recreationist, an appellation I can only describe as absurd, whose passions burned for some idealised Netherland based on the fanciful scribblings of fantasy authors. Nevertheless, she had a great faculty for research. The song is apparently authentic and over 600 years old. I offer it as an example of the Dark Mother's influence on the mortal world. In the spirit of her songs and penchant for things medieval, I gave my muse a taste of old lore. A trip into the James River, tied in a sack, with an owl, a cat, and a serpent. According to the newspaper, she survived the experience. Perhaps she's learned something from it. Come you by my hand, O say a diddle dally, my owl, cruel night bird, with a beak and a talon and a feather. Oh, I am not singing this. Come you by my hand, O say a diddle dally, my cat, cruel hunter, with a claw and a spit and a harsh eye. Oh, come you by my hand, O say a diddle dally, my serpent, cruel trickster, with a bite and a slither and a shimmer. Oh, come to my hands and gift me with poisons, gift me with night sight, gift me with silence and trickery. Oh, name of the mother, my dear sweet mother, Lilith my mother, my blessings, my torture. Oh, Spill me my blood that I might imagine that day in the garden when first you created the owl, the nightcat, and the serpent, and gave them all unto me. Spill me my blood that I might embrace you and poison the world that hath denied us both. Poison the world that hath denied us both. Ahi hi Lilitu, ahi hi Lilitu, poison the world that hath denied us both. Come ye by my hand, O owl, O nightcat, O serpent, lead me into darkness and drown my screams with kisses most fair and most rare, and I pledge thee my life, my troth, my fear. Come ye by my hand and lead me past death. The Rising Tides. Editor's Notes. I first heard this ominous prophecy as a part of the industrial dance mix Time for Breakfast by Shaken Baby Syndrome. It seized my attention with the opening lines and held it throughout. No mortal, I reasoned, could know so much about supposedly hidden affairs. As we all know, our grand masquerade is far too efficient to ever allow such information to seep out into the general public. As I listened, I could not help but be disturbed. When the song had ended, I sought out the disc jockey who had played it. The coolly dispassionate voice intoning the words turned out to be Patricia de la Forge. When I later inquired about the source of the prophecy, she admitted it was far older than she. With the help of the old man, I found a Latin version of the Rising Tides that predated the conquest of Britannia. Thus began my quest for the origins and nature of the modern Lilith cult. It is fitting that I end this cycle with the words that began my journey. As anyone with an ounce of faculty knows, many of the portents outlined below have come true in recent years. Even the mortals know that the sign of a coming end have more to do with ancient proclamations than with facile calendars and ominous round numbers. While the words of Cain proclaim an end by fire, Lilith's vision assures that fire will be extinguished by water. Perhaps the clash of both will sweep this broken earth into the pile of other worlds of shells. As the Ancient One's eyes close again, oblivion descends and everything is silent. Perhaps, after a while, another earth will be born and the whole cycle will begin again. Me, I'm just glad to have the opportunity to rest. I think the coming night will be quite unpleasant. Sleep well, O children of Cain. Some old debts are on the table and your credit is overdrawn. Tick, tick indeed. The Rising Tides. Tremble, O you childer of Cain, tremble, O you children of Seth. Mother is coming, Mother is here. With her lessons of madness and hands full of blood, she comes to make the world anew, and her chariot is pain and horror. The crystal is broken, the demons are free. The crystal is broken, the demons are free. The waters rise, the waters rise. Weep, O you children of immortals, for your unlives shall be as the shells broken by the lightning of each new world. All this shall pass away. Weep, O you Pharisees and priests, for your God is a lie and his promises are empty rags. All this shall pass away. Weep, O you grain-fed maggots squirming in the basket of bread, for your bellies are splitting with the feast, and a storm of flies is coming. All this shall pass away. Weep, O you sullen nightmares, for the dancing gods of flickering screens shall lead you to oblivion. Mother is coming, Mother is here. All this shall pass away. The crystal is broken, the demons are free. The crystal is broken, the demons are free. The waters rise, the waters rise. See the colossus of steel astride the world. Behold the worms in his feet. As the giant totters, the worms rejoice, for there will be food aplenty when the giant falls. See the broken chamber of 500 years and the shattered crystal upon the floor. See the stones weeping and the dragons free. Lilith is here. Lilith is free. Hear the howls in the night, and the wolves of Adam cast themselves into the dragon's coils. Smell the brother's blood from time's beginning, now tepid and thin as water. In water will the light die, in water will the fire die. From the east, from the sea, shall vengeance come, and from those whose blood is water. The cities of the west will blaze with rage, and a great wheel from the east, from the formless lands, will crush them. On the last night, when the moon is a sliver of darkness, comes the final embrace. Shine black the sun, shine black the moon, the waters rise. Ahi hai lilatu. And those are the revelations of the Dark Mother. There's an awful lot in there to pick apart and use as tidbits. Even if your chronicle or your story is not Bahari centric, they can add just a little bit of extra depth to any sort of setting. So again, this has been a reading of the Revelations of the Dark Mother from Vampire the Masquerade. I hope you enjoyed this read through, and keep a watch out, for the tides are rising. Ahi hai lilatu, and good night.